Brandon Whitfield was pointing his finger at me across the boardroom table, and I knew my 22-year career was about to end over a lie. Michael screwed up the Henderson account projections, he announced to the room full of senior partners, his voice carrying that particular blend of arrogance and panic I'd learned to recognize. The numbers are off by 3.2 million. This is exactly the kind of carelessness that's been plaguing this department. My name is Michael Rodriguez. I'm 47 years old, and I'd been managing investment portfolios at Summit Peak Investments since Brandon was learning to tie his shoes. But sitting in that boardroom, watching him perform for his Uncle Charles, I realized none of that experience mattered when you're dealing with someone who sees truth as optional. I'd reviewed the Henderson projections that morning, 3 times. The numbers were solid, conservative, exactly what a pension fund manager like Richard Patterson would want to see. But Brandon was already moving forward with his performance, feeding off the attention from the partners like he always did. I think we need to seriously evaluate whether Michael still has the attention to detail this firm requires, he continued, looking directly at Charles Whitfield, the chairman, who sat at the head of the table with that carefully neutral expression he wore whenever his nephew was putting on a show. The room went quiet. I could hear the air conditioning humming, could see Jennifer Walsh from accounting shifting uncomfortably in her chair. 22 years of building client relationships, of protecting people's retirement savings, of mentoring junior analysts who now ran their own departments. All of it coming down to this moment, this lie, this kid who'd never worked anywhere except his family's firm. I stood up slowly, keeping my voice level despite the anger building in my chest. The mortgage payment was due next week. My son's final semester at college needed funding in 6 weeks. At 47, starting over wasn't just about pride anymore. It was about survival. Brandon, I reviewed those numbers 3 times this morning. They're accurate. If there's an error, it didn't come from my analysis. He laughed. Actually laughed. Like the idea of questioning him was absurd. He pulled out a folder, waving it like evidence in a trial. Really? Because I have the report right here with your signature on it. Want to explain these discrepancies to Mr. Patterson when he arrives for the 2 o'clock meeting? Richard Patterson, the institutional investor considering a $2 billion placement with our firm. The meeting I'd been preparing for all week, going over every detail, every projection, every risk assessment. The deal that would secure the firm's expansion plans for the next 3 years. Brandon knew exactly what he was doing, exactly how much pressure that name would create. Let me see that report, I said, reaching out. I don't think so. Brandon pulled the folder back against his chest like a child protecting a toy. Charles, I motion that we remove Michael from the Patterson account immediately. We can't risk this kind of exposure with a client of that magnitude. I watched Charles's face, looking for some sign of the man who'd hired me 22 years ago, who'd trusted my judgment on dozens of major deals, who'd relied on my analysis during the 2008 crisis when half the firm's competitors went under. But all I saw was a tired executive who'd been letting his nephew play dress-up in the corner office for 3 years, ever since Brandon graduated from Harvard with his MBA and his sense of inherited authority. Michael, Charles said finally, clearing his throat, perhaps it would be best if you sat this one out. Let Brandon handle the Patterson meeting. I looked around the room at faces I'd known for over a decade, partners I'd helped close deals with during good years and bad. People who'd trusted my judgment when their own clients' money was on the line. Not one of them would meet my eyes. Not one of them was willing to challenge the chairman's nephew, even when they knew he was lying. The silence stretched out until it became uncomfortable. I could feel my career hanging in the balance, could feel 22 years of reputation and relationships teetering on the edge of Brandon's ego and his uncle's cowardice. Fine, I said, but I want to review that report. If there's an error, I need to understand where it came from. These are real people's retirement funds we're talking about. Brandon slipped the folder under his arm with a satisfied smile. I'll handle the investigation. Why don't you take the rest of the day to think about your future here? That last line hit me like a physical blow. After everything I'd built at this firm, everything I'd contributed, this entitled kid was basically telling me I was finished, and his uncle was going to let it happen. I walked out of that boardroom with my spine straight and my dignity intact. But I knew something fundamental had shifted. The firm I'd helped build, the culture I'd tried to maintain, the standards I'd fought to uphold. None of it mattered when family politics trumped professional competence. Back in my office, I sat staring at the framed photo of my son graduating college last spring. He'd worked 2 jobs to help pay for his education, understanding that my salary, good as it was, couldn't cover everything. In 6 weeks, I needed to write another tuition check. The mortgage had 12 years left on it. At 47, those weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They were responsibilities that didn't pause for office politics or family feuds. The thank you notes from clients were stacked beside my computer. Teachers, firefighters, civil servants who'd trusted me to protect their pensions. People who'd worked 30 years expecting their retirement savings to be there when they needed them. That's what this was really about, I realized. Not Brandon's insecurity or Charles's willingness to enable it. It was about whether people like Richard Patterson could trust their money to a firm where competence mattered less than connections. Around 1:30, I decided to do something I rarely did. I needed air, needed to clear my head before the Patterson meeting that I was no longer allowed to attend. Walking through the lobby, I tried to process what had just happened and what it meant for everything I'd built. That's when I saw Richard Patterson stepping out of the elevator, 30 minutes early as always, carrying that worn leather briefcase he'd had for the 8 years we'd worked together. He spotted me immediately, his face lighting up with that genuine warmth that made him different from most institutional investors. "Michael," he said, extending his hand for that firm handshake he was known for. "Ready for our discussion about the pension fund placement?" I hesitated. Every instinct told me to follow protocol, to direct him upstairs to Brandon, to let the kid fumble through a presentation he'd probably thrown together during lunch. But standing there, looking at Richard Patterson, a man who managed retirement funds for 50,000 teachers, firefighters, and civil servants, I couldn't do it. These people had worked 30-year careers expecting their money to be protected by professionals who knew what they were doing. "Richard, I need to tell you something. There's been a change. Brandon Whitfield will be handling your account from now on." His expression shifted slightly, just a small tightening around the eyes. "Oh? May I ask why?" I could have played it safe, could have invented some story about workload redistribution or strategic realignment. Instead, I told him the truth, because if you can't be honest with someone who trusts you with $2 billion, you shouldn't be in this business. Brandon claims there's an error in my analysis of the Henderson account. He's using it as grounds to remove me from your placement. Richard studied my face for a long moment, and I could see him processing this information the same way he evaluated every investment opportunity, methodically, carefully, looking for the real story behind the surface presentation. "Michael, in the 8 years we've worked together, have you ever made a material calculation error?" "Not once. And I reviewed the Henderson numbers this morning before the meeting. They're solid. Interesting." He pulled out his phone and scrolled through something, his jaw tightening slightly. "Because I received an email an hour ago canceling our 2 o'clock meeting, supposedly due to internal restructuring that required immediate attention. I decided to come anyway to see what was really happening." My stomach dropped. No one told me the meeting was canceled. I suspected as much. Richard glanced around the lobby, then back at me. "Michael, let's take a walk. I think you and I need to have a conversation away from this building." We ended up at Fletcher's Coffee, 2 blocks away from Summit Peak. Richard ordered black coffee. I got the same. We found a corner booth where no one from the firm would accidentally spot us having what was clearly becoming more than a casual conversation. "Talk to me," he said simply, setting down his cup. So I did. For the first time in years, I laid out everything I'd been watching happen at Summit Peak. Brandon's pattern of undermining senior staff who didn't support his initiatives. Proposals that looked impressive in PowerPoint but fell apart the moment you ran real numbers. A systematic effort to centralize all major client communications through him, cutting out the experienced managers who'd built relationships over decades. He's been positioning himself as the future of the firm, I explained. Every decision seems designed to marginalize people with actual experience. The Henderson report was just convenient ammunition. Richard nodded slowly, stirring his coffee with deliberate movements. "I've noticed changes in the firm's communication style over the past year. More aggressive sales language, less substantive analysis. I attributed it to market pressures, firms trying to differentiate themselves in a competitive environment. It's more than that. Brandon's convinced Charles that rapid expansion is the answer to everything. But he doesn't understand risk assessment the way someone with actual experience does. He sees conservative projections as obstacles to overcome, not warnings to respect." Give me a specific example. I thought for a moment, then decided to tell him about something that had been bothering me for weeks. Last month, Brandon pushed hard for us to enter the cryptocurrency derivatives market. When I raised concerns about volatility and regulatory uncertainty, especially for pension fund allocations, he accused me of being stuck in the past. He wanted to allocate 15% of new client funds to crypto positions. Richard set his cup down harder than necessary. 15%? For institutional retirement funds? That's when I realized this wasn't about different investment philosophies or generational perspectives on risk. This was about someone who fundamentally doesn't understand fiduciary responsibility. Someone who thinks being bold means being reckless with other people's life savings. We sat in silence for a moment. Through the window, I could see Summit Peak's building, could imagine Brandon upstairs right now, preparing for a meeting with Richard that he assumed would go exactly as planned. The arrogance of it struck me again, not just the willingness to lie about my work, but the assumption that Richard wouldn't notice the difference in quality, wouldn't care about the substance behind the presentation. "Michael," Richard said finally, "what would you do if you had complete authority to build an investment management approach from the ground up? Focus on fundamentals, thorough research, transparent communication, and never forgetting that we're managing other people's most important asset, their ability to retire with dignity. Build a team of analysts who understand that steady, sustainable returns matter more than flashy quarterly numbers. And if you had access to significant institutional capital, say $2 billion, my heart started beating faster. Richard Patterson wasn't the kind of man who asked hypothetical questions. Are you asking theoretically? I'm asking what it would take for you to start your own firm. I stared at him across the small table, trying to process what he was suggesting. Richard Patterson represented one of the largest pension funds on the West Coast. He'd built his reputation over 35 years by being conservative, methodical, and absolutely unwilling to take unnecessary risks with teachers' and firefighters' retirement money. If he was suggesting what I thought he was suggesting, "Richard, I appreciate the confidence, but I just lost my position an hour ago. At 47, with a mortgage and college tuition to pay, I'm not exactly in a position to start anything. You didn't lose your position because of incompetence. You lost it because you threatened someone's ego and exposed their lack of qualification. There's a fundamental difference." He leaned forward, his voice taking on the same intensity I'd heard him use when grilling investment managers about their risk models. "I've been looking for a reason to pull our funds from Summit Peak for months. Today gave me all the justification I need." By the time I got home that evening, Richard had already set things in motion. He'd called Charles Whitfield directly from the coffee shop, informing him that the pension fund would not be placing any money with Summit Peak Investments. No explanation beyond concerns about management competency and risk assessment protocols. No negotiation. Just a clean withdrawal of a deal that represented 6 months of projected revenue for the firm. My phone started buzzing around 7 p.m. Jennifer from accounting called first, her voice barely above a whisper. "Michael, what happened today?" Brandon called an emergency meeting at 5 o'clock. He was furious, saying the Patterson deal fell through because of internal sabotage. "Sabotage is an interesting word choice," I said, settling into my kitchen chair with a beer I definitely needed. "Did he mention what kind of sabotage?" He implied someone had been bad-mouthing the firm to clients. Charles looked like he'd aged 10 years. Steve Morrison from security said Patterson never even showed up for the 2 o'clock meeting. Steve Morrison, good guy, ex-military, someone who'd worked his way up from night security to head of building operations. We'd shared plenty of early morning conversations over the years when I was pulling all-nighters during earnings season. If Steve was talking, it meant the whole building knew something major had gone wrong. Did Brandon offer any theories about who might have been sabotaging the firm? Jennifer was quiet for a moment. "He mentioned your name, said maybe removing you from the account hadn't been enough." Charles shut him down pretty quickly, but the damage was done. Everyone in that room knew what he was implying. After Jennifer hung up, I sat in my kitchen thinking about the 47 years that had led to this moment. Growing up working class, putting myself through business school, spending 22 years building something I was proud of. And now Brandon Whitfield, who'd never earned anything in his life, was trying to frame me for his own incompetence. My phone rang again. This time it was Charles Whitfield himself. "Michael, we need to talk. Can you come in first thing tomorrow morning?" I'm not sure that's a good idea, Charles. Your nephew made it pretty clear where I stand. About that, there may have been some miscommunication yesterday. Richard Patterson specifically requested to work with you. We can't afford to lose that placement. Miscommunication. Right. 24 hours ago, I was a liability. Now I was essential. The speed of corporate memory never failed to amaze me. Charles, I think there's been more than miscommunication, but I'm willing to discuss it. I arrived at Summit Peak the next morning at 10 a.m., walking through the same lobby where I'd stood talking to Richard just 18 hours earlier. The receptionist smiled at me like nothing had changed, but I caught the curious looks from junior staff. Word travels fast in a building this size, especially when it involves the chairman's nephew and a $2 billion deal going sideways. Charles was waiting in his office looking like he hadn't slept. Brandon sat beside him, his face carefully neutral, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. This wasn't how he'd expected his power play to work out. "Michael, sit down," Charles began. "I think we need to clear the air about yesterday's meeting. I'm listening." Brandon spoke first, his voice more controlled than it had been in the boardroom. There was obviously some confusion about the Henderson report. I may have been too hasty in my assessment of the situation. May have been. Still couldn't own his mistake properly, even when his uncle's livelihood depended on cleaning up the mess. "The thing is," Charles continued, "Richard Patterson has specifically requested that you handle his account personally. Apparently, he's not comfortable working with anyone else on our team." I nodded slowly. "I appreciate Richard's confidence, but before we move forward, I need to understand what happened to that Henderson report Brandon mentioned yesterday. If there was actually an error, I need to know where it came from so we can prevent it from happening again." The room went quiet. Brandon shifted in his chair, and Charles seemed to be weighing his options carefully. I could see him calculating the cost of admitting his nephew had lied versus the cost of losing the biggest placement opportunity the firm had seen in 2 years. "Like I said, there was some confusion," Brandon replied. "The numbers you provided were actually correct. I was looking at an outdated version of the client file when I made my assessment." "An outdated version." "Right. In 22 years in this business, I'd learned to recognize a cover-up when I heard one. But more importantly, I'd learned to recognize when someone was doubling down on their mistakes instead of learning from them." "Charles," I said, turning to face him directly, "I'll need to see all the documentation from the Henderson analysis before I can move forward with any new client work. If there are systematic errors in our reporting process, that affects every account we manage. Richard Patterson isn't just investing $2 billion with us. He's trusting us with 50,000 people's retirement security." The silence that followed was different from the one in the boardroom yesterday. This wasn't about power or politics. This was about whether Charles Whitfield was willing to run a firm based on professional standards or family loyalty. "That won't be necessary," Charles said finally. "We've identified the source of the confusion. Moving forward, we'll implement better communication protocols to ensure this kind of misunderstanding doesn't happen again." Better communication protocols. Corporate speak for, "We'll be more careful about framing you next time." I'd heard enough. I stood up, feeling clearer about my decision than I had in months. "I appreciate the offer, Charles, but I think it's time for me to explore other opportunities." Brandon's head snapped up. "Michael, let's not be hasty here. We can work through this professional disagreement." Professional disagreement, that's what he was calling it now. "Actually, we can't, because this isn't about a reporting error or a communication breakdown. This is about integrity, and once you compromise that, everything else becomes negotiable." I headed toward the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Charles, you might want to review Brandon's cryptocurrency derivatives proposal from last month. I think you'll find the risk assessment particularly interesting." I walked out of Summit Peak Investments knowing I'd never walk back in as an employee. But I wasn't walking away empty-handed. I was walking toward the chance to build something better, something based on competence instead of connections, ethics instead of ego. Richard was waiting for me in the parking garage, leaning against his car with a slight smile. "How did it go?" he asked. "About as expected. They offered me my job back if I'd pretend yesterday never happened." "And?" "I told them some things are more important than a paycheck." Richard nodded approvingly. "Then let's go build something worth protecting." Richard and I spent the next 2 weeks setting up Rodriguez Capital Partners. The paperwork moved faster than I expected, partly because Richard had connections throughout the regulatory system, and partly because we both understood that good people's retirement money was sitting idle while we dealt with bureaucracy. Every day that passed was a day those pension funds weren't earning the steady, reliable returns that teachers and firefighters were counting on. Our first office was modest. 3 rooms in a building downtown, nothing fancy, but clean and honest and mine. The view wasn't much, but when I sat at my desk that first morning, looking out at the Denver skyline, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years at Summit Peak, the satisfaction of building something from the ground up based on principles instead of politics. I hired Jennifer Walsh away from Summit Peak to handle our accounting. She'd been watching the firm's culture deteriorate for months, tired of working in an environment where competence took a back seat to connections. Steve Morrison joined us as head of operations, bringing the kind of steady leadership you get from someone who'd worked his way up without anyone handing him shortcuts. The day we officially opened for business, my phone rang. It was one of the junior analysts from my old firm, someone I'd mentored during his first year. "Mr. Rodriguez, I wanted to let you know what happened after you left." "I'm listening." "Charles found out about that cryptocurrency derivatives proposal you mentioned. Turns out Brandon had already started moving client money into cryptocurrency positions without board approval. Small amounts at first, testing the waters, but it added up to about $12 million across 8 different accounts. My blood ran cold. $12 million of other people's retirement savings gambled on cryptocurrency without their knowledge or consent. How long had this been going on? About 3 months. But here's the thing. The positions he chose lost 40% of their value in the 2 weeks after you left. When the board found out about both the unauthorized trading and the losses, they called an emergency session that night. Brandon was terminated immediately. Charles announced his retirement the next morning. I sat down hard in my desk chair, thinking about what might have happened if I'd stayed quiet, if I'd let Brandon continue down his reckless path. How many more teachers and firefighters would have seen their retirement savings disappear into Brandon's cryptocurrency experiment? How many families would have paid the price for one person's arrogance and another's willingness to enable it? What about the clients who lost money? The firm covered the losses out of their operating reserves and insurance, but word got out fast. By the end of that week, 6 major clients had pulled their accounts, the firm's hemorrhaging money and credibility. After I hung up, I sat in my empty office for a long time, processing what I'd just learned. The culture of entitlement and corner-cutting that I'd fought against for years had finally collapsed under its own weight, but it had taken innocent people's money down with it, and that reality sat heavy in my chest. 6 months later, Rodriguez Capital Partners was managing $2.4 billion in institutional funds. We'd hired 12 analysts, all of them focused on the kind of thorough, conservative investment approach that actually protects people's money over the long term. Richard's pension fund was performing 3.8% better than the market average, and we had a waiting list of institutional clients who'd heard about our approach to risk management and ethical oversight. But the real measure of success came in smaller moments. When Jennifer showed me thank you letters from retired teachers whose pension checks had grown steadily under our management. When Steve brought in a group of firefighters who wanted to understand how their retirement funds were being invested. When young analysts told me they'd joined our firm because they wanted to work somewhere that values competence over connections. Last week, I got a call that meant more to me than all the industry recognition and client testimonials combined. "Dad, I saw the article in Financial Weekly about your firm making the top 10 list for institutional investment management. I'm proud of you." My son's voice carried something I hadn't heard before, not just pride, but understanding. He was 22 now, starting his own career, beginning to understand what it means to build something worth protecting. "Thanks, son. It's been quite a year. I've been thinking about what you said when all this started, about integrity being more valuable than a paycheck, even when the paycheck is really important. I get it now. I see what you were willing to risk to do the right thing." That conversation crystallized something for me. This wasn't just about professional vindication or proving Brandon Whitfield wrong. It was about demonstrating that principles matter, that competence should triumph over connections, that sometimes the most important thing you can do is refuse to participate in a system that values the wrong things. I still drive past the Summit Peak building sometimes on my way to work. 3 floors sit empty now, with for lease signs in the lobby windows. The firm survived, barely, under new management, but it's a shadow of what it once was. I don't feel satisfaction when I see it. I feel sadness for all the good people who lost their jobs because of poor leadership. and hope that they've found places where their talents are valued. But I also feel something deeper, the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you stood up when it mattered. Every day at Rodriguez Capital Partners, we're proving that it's possible to build something better, something based on expertise instead of entitlement, on ethics instead of ego, on protecting people's futures instead of protecting people's pride. The morning Brandon Whitfield pointed his finger at me across that boardroom table, I thought my career was ending. I was wrong. My career wasn't ending. It was finally beginning to become what I'd always hoped it could be. Sometimes the most important door that closes is the one that was keeping you from walking through the right one. At 47, I'd learned that starting over isn't about age or timing or having everything figured out. It's about having the courage to bet on yourself when the alternative is compromising everything you believe in. And sometimes, if you're lucky enough to find the right partners and the right principles to build on, that bet pays dividends far beyond anything you could have imagined. The truth is, integrity isn't just about doing the right thing, it's about discovering that when you refuse to compromise your values, the world has a way of reshaping itself around your character instead of your compliance.